They thought no one was watching. The black van had circled the block 3 times in the past 20 minutes. Jax noticed because noticing was survival. When you slept in doorways and ate from dumpsters, you learned to catalog every vehicle, every face, every pattern that broke the rhythm of the street. He sat in the shadow of an alleyway off Maple Street, his back against sun-warmed brick, whittling a 4-foot length of white oak. The wood had started life as a shovel handle he'd pulled from a construction site dumpster 6 months ago. Now, after countless hours of sanding against concrete and hardening over trash can fires, it was smooth as glass and dense as iron. The weight of it felt right in his hands, solid, dependable, real. Jax was 19 years old, and invisible. His dirty blonde hair hung past his ears, unwashed for days. His army jacket, 3 sizes too large and probably older than he was, bore stains he'd stopped trying to identify. His jeans had holes that weren't fashionable. His boots had cardboard stuffed inside where the soles had worn through. But his eyes were sharp. Hungry, yes, but alert. The little girl caught his attention because she shouldn't have been alone. She was maybe 10 years old, wearing a private school uniform that cost more than Jax had seen in a year. Dark hair in a neat ponytail, a purple backpack covered in butterfly patches. She sat on a bench outside Rossi's ice cream parlor, working on a chocolate cone that was melting faster than she could lick it. Her feet swung above the ground, not quite touching the sidewalk. She kept checking her phone. Looking around. Waiting. Jax's fingers stilled on the oak staff. Something was wrong. The bodyguard, because a kid dressed like that definitely had a bodyguard, was slumped against the ice cream parlor's wall 20 feet away. At first glance, he looked like he was checking his own phone. But his posture was wrong. Too loose. His hand had fallen away from his hip, where Jax could just make out the outline of a holster beneath his jacket. Drugged, Jax realized. Or knocked out. The black van turned onto Maple Street for the 4th time. Jax stood, his heart beginning to hammer. The staff felt heavier in his hand. He'd carved this piece of oak for protection against the other homeless guys who sometimes got territorial, or the drunk college kids who thought beating up street trash was funny. He'd never imagined actually using it. The van accelerated. The girl looked up from her ice cream, sensing something wrong a second too late. The van's side door exploded open before it even stopped moving. 3 men in ski masks erupted onto the sidewalk like a breaking wave. The first one grabbed the girl's backpack. The second clamped a hand over her mouth, muffling her scream. The third scanned the street, one hand inside his jacket. The world seemed to slow down. Jax saw the terror in the girl's eyes, that pure, animal panic he remembered from his own childhood, from foster homes where no one came when you screamed. He saw her ice cream cone fall to the pavement, chocolate spreading across concrete like blood. He saw the men dragging her toward the van. He saw the street full of people who were looking the other way, who didn't want to get involved, who would tell themselves later they hadn't seen anything. And Jax made a choice. Not because he was brave. Not because he was stupid. But because he'd spent 19 years being powerless, and somewhere deep in his starving, aching body, something had finally had enough. He gripped the oak staff with both hands and ran. Jax had never been in a real fight. Street scuffles, sure, shoving matches over sleeping spots, quick scrambles when shop owners chased him away. But nothing like this. Nothing that mattered this much. The first man never saw him coming. Jax swung the staff like a baseball bat, putting every ounce of his wiry strength into the blow. 4 feet of hardened white oak connected with the man's knee with a sound like a branch snapping. The man's leg folded the wrong way. He went down screaming, his grip on the girl releasing. The second man spun, pulling a knife from his belt. The hell! Jax jabbed the staff forward like a spear, catching him in the solar plexus. The man doubled over, gasping. Jax brought the staff down on the back of his head. The man crumpled. 2 seconds. 2 down. The third man had the girl now, one arm around her waist, lifting her toward the van. He'd drawn a pistol but couldn't get a clear shot with the struggling child in his arms. "Let her go!" Jax's voice cracked, making him sound younger than 19, but he didn't care. He advanced, staff raised. The man with the broken knee was crawling toward the van, whimpering. The one Jax had hit in the head was stirring. This had to end fast. The third man made his choice. He threw the girl aside. She hit the pavement hard, the air rushing from her lungs, and raised the pistol with both hands. Jax had half a second to live or die. He threw himself sideways as the gun barked. The bullet whined past his ear, so close he felt the heat of it. He rolled, came up running, closed the distance before the man could aim again. The staff caught the gun hand, snapping bones. The pistol clattered away. The man cursed in Spanish and pulled a knife with his left hand, slashing wildly. The blade caught Jax across the chest, parting his jacket and the shirt beneath, drawing a line of fire across his ribs. Jax screamed, not in pain, but in rage. In 19 years of suffering, of being beaten and starved and thrown away like garbage, all that fury found its voice. He brought the staff down on the man's wrist, breaking it. Brought it up into his ribs, cracking them. The man stumbled backward, and Jax hit him again, and again, until the staff broke with a sharp crack, leaving Jax holding a 3-foot length of jagged wood. The man with the broken knee had made it to the van. The driver was shouting, gunning the engine. The one Jax had knocked down was climbing to his feet, blood running from his scalp. They were going to leave. Going to get away. No! Jax staggered forward, his chest on fire, blood soaking into his shirt. The girl was behind him, crying. He couldn't let them leave. If they left, they'd come back. They'd try again. The knife caught him in the thigh. He hadn't seen the third man still had it. The blade went deep, and Jax's leg buckled. He fell to one knee, and the world tilted. The man kicked him in the face, and Jax tasted blood. Homeless trash. The man spat. Should have minded your own business. Through the haze of pain, Jax heard it, a sound like thunder rolling across the earth. A sound that made the ground vibrate beneath his knees. A sound he'd heard before, from bridges where he sometimes slept. Motorcycles. Dozens of them. The man heard it too. His eyes went wide behind the ski mask. We're out! He shouted, limping toward the van. Jax lunged forward, ignoring the fire in his leg, and jammed the jagged end of the broken staff into the van's rear tire. The oak punched through the rubber with a hiss. The van lurched. The men piled in anyway, the driver flooring it, the vehicle limping away on a shredding tire. Jax collapsed onto his side, the broken staff still clutched in his hand. The girl was crying, calling for her daddy. The thunder of engines filled the street like the end of the world. The first motorcycle that roared around the corner was a beast, a Harley-Davidson Road King, black as midnight, chrome gleaming like knives. The rider was even more terrifying, 6'4", built like a walking tank, his bald head gleaming with sweat, his gray beard braided into 3 thick ropes. Tattoos covered every visible inch of skin. On his back, the leather vest, the kilt, bore a patch that made Jax's blood run cold even through the shock and pain. The death head. The winged skull. The most feared symbol in the motorcycle world. Hell's Angels. The man, and Jax understood with crystal clarity that this was not just a man, this was a force of nature, killed his engine, and was off his bike before it had fully stopped. A dozen more motorcycles pulled up behind him, their riders dismounting in practiced synchronization. Lily! The man's voice could have shattered glass. He ran toward the crying girl, his boots pounding the pavement. Jax tried to stand. Failed. Tried again. He had to protect her. Had to make sure she was safe. His vision swam, red and black at the edges, but he forced himself to his feet, swaying. He raised the broken staff in shaking hands. The big man reached the girl, dropped to his knees beside her. Baby, are you hurt? Did they? Daddy! Lily threw herself into his arms, sobbing. They tried to take me. But he saved me. Daddy, he saved me. The man, Daddy, the president of the Hells Angels, looked up. His eyes found Jack's, took in the bleeding chest, the knife still protruding from his thigh, the broken weapon raised in defense. Jax saw his own death in those eyes. Back off, Jax croaked, barely able to stand. I'll. The man stood, still holding Lily in one arm. He was even bigger standing up. His hand moved toward his belt, and Jax was certain he was about to die. Instead, the man held up both palms, showing empty hands. Easy, son, he said, his voice gone soft. I'm not going to hurt you. Liar, Jax whispered. The staff wavered. Everyone always. His leg gave out. He fell. The man caught him before he hit the ground. Jax found himself cradled in arms as strong as steel beams, staring up at a face covered in scars and ink and gray beard, and somehow it was the gentlest thing he'd ever experienced. Get the doc! The man, Marcus, Jax would learn later, Marcus, Anvil, Thorn, bellowed over his shoulder. Get him now! And someone tell me where the hell Jerry was! He looked down at Jax. Stay with me, kid. You hear me? Stay with me. The girl, Jax managed. Is she? She's safe. Marcus's voice cracked, just for a second. Because of you. She's safe because of you. Jax wanted to say something brave, something tough. Instead, he said, I'm hungry. Then the world went black. Jax woke up warm. That was the first shock. He couldn't remember the last time he'd woken up warm. His fingers flexed automatically, expecting to find cardboard, concrete, maybe newspaper if he'd been lucky. Instead, they found cotton. Soft, clean cotton. Sheets. His eyes snapped open. The room was small but clean, lit by afternoon sunlight streaming through a window covered with iron bars. The walls were concrete block, painted white. A motorcycle poster hung on one wall, a vintage Harley knucklehead. A dresser stood against another wall, its surface empty except for a bottle of water and a sandwich wrapped in plastic. Jax's chest was bandaged. So was his thigh. Both wounds ached like hell, but the pain was distant, fuzzy. Painkillers, probably. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The room spun. Easy there, warrior. Jax's head whipped toward the voice, and he immediately wished he hadn't. The big man, Marcus, sat in a chair by the door, still wearing his jeans and boots, but the cute was gone. Without the intimidating leather vest, in just a plain black t-shirt, he looked almost human. Almost. Where am I? Jax's throat was dry, his voice rough. My clubhouse. Well, the Hells Angels clubhouse. We call it the church. Marcus nodded toward the water bottle. Drink. Doctor says you lost a lot of blood. Jax didn't move. Couldn't. His body had frozen, every instinct screaming danger. He'd heard stories about the Hells Angels. Everyone had. They ran guns, drugs, protection rackets. They were criminals. Outlaws. The 1%. And he was alone, wounded, in their stronghold. Marcus seemed to read his mind. A ghost of a smile touched his bearded face, not cruel, just sad. You think I brought you here to hurt you? Everyone hurts me eventually, Jax said quietly. The smile died. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. The man's hands were huge, scarred, with hell tattooed across the knuckles of his left hand and sent across his right. Kid, what's your name? Jax. Jax. I'm Marcus. And I need you to understand something. His voice was low, intense. Yesterday, you took a knife for my daughter. You fought 3 armed men with a stick. You broke your weapon protecting her, and when you couldn't stand any more, you still tried to stop them from leaving. He paused. Do you know what that makes you? Jax shook his head mutely. That makes you the bravest man I've met in 20 years of this life. Marcus stood up, and despite himself, Jax flinched. The big man noticed and stopped moving. I'm not gonna hurt you, Jax. Nobody in this club is gonna hurt you. You have my word, and my word is iron. Why should I believe you? Because you saved my little girl. Marcus's voice went thick with emotion. Because Lily is the only pure thing in my life, and you bled for her when you didn't even know who she was. You didn't do it for money. You didn't do it for respect. You did it because it was right. He picked up the water bottle, unscrewed the cap, and held it out. I owe you a debt I can never repay. So yeah, you can believe me. Jax took the water. Drank. It was the cleanest, coldest water he'd ever tasted. The sandwich is turkey and Swiss, Marcus said. We've got more in the kitchen. Whatever you want. You're safe here, Jax. I promise. Jax wanted to believe it so badly it hurt worse than his wounds. What happens now? He asked. Now? Marcus moved toward the door. Now you heal. Then we talk. And then. His hand rested on the doorknob. Then we find the men who did this, and we make sure they never hurt anyone again. The way he said it wasn't a threat. It was a vow. 3 days later, Jax sat in a leather chair in a room called church, and watched the most dangerous men he'd ever seen thump their fists on a heavy oak table in approval. Church wasn't a chapel. It was a conference room in the back of the clubhouse, windowless and soundproof. The table was scarred with decades of use, carved with initials and symbols. 12 men sat around it, all wearing their cuts, all bearing the death head patch. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his president's patch catching the overhead light. Jax was still healing, his chest and thigh wrapped in fresh bandages. But he'd insisted on being here. Marcus had agreed on the condition that Jax sat in the prospect's chair, a smaller seat against the wall, marking him as an observer, not a member. We've identified the van, said a lean man with a scarred face. His cute identified him as Riggs, the sergeant-at-arms, the club's enforcer. Belongs to the Zetas. They're a cartel crew trying to push into our territory. Drugs, mostly. Some human trafficking. A rumble of anger went through the room. They knew who they were taking, Riggs continued. The van was parked outside Lily's school that morning. They followed her to the ice cream place. They drugged Jerry. He nodded toward an empty chair. And they grabbed her. This wasn't random. This was a statement. Then we make a statement back, growled a massive man named Tiny, who was anything but. We burn their whole operation to the ground. Agreed, Marcus said. But we do it right. Clean. Surgical. We're not starting a war, we're ending one before it begins. He looked around the table. The Zetas broke the code. Kids are off limits. Always have been, always will be. They need to learn that some lines you don't cross. The men murmured agreement. Marcus stood. He walked to a corner of the room where something long and wrapped in cloth leaned against the wall. Jax recognized the shape, his staff. The broken staff. Marcus unwrapped it slowly, reverently. Except it wasn't broken anymore. Someone had taken the 2 pieces and bound them together with leather strips, wrapping the grip until it was comfortable and secure. The jagged, shattered end had been cut clean and dipped in something that gleamed silver in the light. It looked primitive and beautiful and deadly all at once. Marcus carried it to Jax. The room fell silent. You went to war with this, Marcus said quietly. Against men with guns and knives you had a piece of wood and you won. That takes guts. That takes heart. He held out the staff. We thought you should have it back. Modified. Improved. But still yours. Jax stood on shaking legs and took the staff. The weight was perfect, the balance right. The silver tip caught the light like a promise. We're going after them, Marcus said. Tonight. We're going to teach the Zetas what happens when you touch a Hell's Angels family. He paused. You don't have to come. You've done enough. More than enough. Jax looked at the staff in his hands. Looked at the men around the table. Hard men, dangerous men, but men who had shown him more respect in 3 days than he'd received in 19 years. I want to go, he said. Marcus smiled, a wolf smile, all teeth and promise. Then you ride with me. The men around the table thumped their fists again, harder this time. The sound was like war drums. Night fell on the city like a hammer. Jack stood in the clubhouse parking lot, his modified staff in his hand, and watched an army assemble. They came from everywhere. The local chapter, of course, 12 men who'd been in church. But Marcus had made calls, and the brothers had answered. From San Jose, Oakland, Fresno, even as far south as San Diego, they came. Motorcycles of every kind, Softails, Dynas, Road Kings, Street Glides, all ridden by men wearing the death head. By the time the sun touched the horizon, there were over 200 motorcycles in formation. Jax had never seen anything like it. The machines gleamed in the fading light, chrome and steel and leather. The riders stood beside their bikes, talking in low voices, checking weapons, preparing for war. Some wore brass knuckles. Others carried chains. A few had baseball bats strapped to their bikes. And yes, Jax saw, some had guns. But they weren't a mob. They moved with discipline, with purpose. Leaders barked orders. Men fell into formation. This wasn't chaos. It was orchestrated violence. Marcus found Jack standing alone, gripping his staff. You okay? I've never. Jack struggled for words. There's so many. When you touch one of us, you touch all of us, Marcus said simply. That's what it means to be family. He nodded toward a black SUV, armored and ominous. You'll ride in the crash truck. Bulletproof glass, reinforced panels. You stay in there until I say otherwise. Clear? But I want to. I know what you want. Marcus's voice was firm but not unkind. But you're hurt, you're untrained, and you're 19. You've proved your courage, Jax. You don't have to prove it again. Let us do what we do. Jax wanted to argue. But the look in Marcus's eyes stopped him. It wasn't condescension, it was concern. Protection. It was what a father's look should be. Okay, Jax said quietly. Good man. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Come on. Let's go teach some lessons. The engine started like a symphony of thunder. The Zetas operated out of an old warehouse near the docks, a concrete box surrounded by chain-link fence and half-hearted security cameras. To most people, it looked abandoned. To anyone who knew the streets, it screamed criminal enterprise. The Hells Angels didn't bother with subtlety. Jax watched from the SUV as 200 motorcycles formed a perimeter around the warehouse, their headlights turning night into day. The sound of the engines was overwhelming, a physical force that made the SUV's windows vibrate. Marcus stood in front of his Road King, speaking into a radio. Around him, men checked their weapons one final time. This wasn't an assault, it was an execution. The warehouse's main door opened. A man in a tank top stepped out, squinting into the lights, his hand shading his eyes. He saw the motorcycles, the men, the death head patches, and his face went white. He ran back inside. Go, Marcus said into the radio. What happened next was violence distilled to its purest form. 20 bikers hit the front entrance, their combined weight and momentum tearing the door off its hinges. They poured inside like a flood. Jax heard shouting, screaming, the meaty sound of fists on flesh. Gunshots, 3, 4, then silence. More bikers circled to the back, cutting off escape routes. The warehouse was surrounded, sealed. There would be no running. 5 minutes later, men were dragged from the warehouse. Some were bleeding. All were terrified. They were thrown to the ground in front of Marcus, who stood with his arms crossed, his face carved from stone. Where's Ramirez? Marcus asked quietly. One of the men, young, maybe 20, with Zeta tattoos on his neck, tried to look tough. We don't know, no. Tiny hit him. Once. The man went down and stayed down. Let me ask again, Marcus said, still quiet, still calm. Where is Ramirez? A different man, older, bleeding from a cut above his eye, pointed toward the warehouse. Inside. 2nd floor. He's armed, man. He's got an AK. Marcus nodded to Riggs. Bring him. Riggs and 3 others went inside. There were more shouts, a brief struggle, then they emerged dragging a man in his 30s, well-dressed, his face twisted in fury and fear. Ramirez. He saw Marcus and spat. You can't touch me. You know who I work for? You know what they'll do? I know you kidnapped my daughter, Marcus said. His voice had gone very, very quiet. I know you broke the oldest rule we have. Kids are off limits, Ramirez. Always. In every organization, in every code, kids are off limits. It was just business. Ramirez struggled against the men holding him. Just a payday. No one was supposed to get hurt. But someone did get hurt. Marcus nodded toward the SUV. Jax. Come here. Jax's heart hammered. His hands shook on the staff. But he opened the SUV door and stepped out into the light. Every eye turned to him. This skinny, wounded kid in a too-big jacket, limping slightly, holding a modified stick. He looked like nothing. He looked like no one. Until Ramirez saw him. The color drained from the cartel lieutenant's face. You're the homeless trash. The kid with the stick. Yeah, Jax said softly. That's me. Marcus smiled, and it was terrible. This kid, this homeless, starving, wounded kid, beat 3 of your men with a piece of wood. Broke bones. Saved my daughter. Took a knife for her. He leaned close to Ramirez. You got beat by a boy with a stick. And now you answer to me. What happened next, Jax would never speak of. Not because it was too violent, though it was. But because some lessons need to be taught in the dark, and remembered in silence. When it was over, Ramirez and his men were left alive. Barely. But they would remember. And they would tell their organization what happened when you touched a Hells Angels family. The message would be heard. 2 months later, Jack stood in the clubhouse bar, clean-shaven and clear-eyed, wearing new jeans and a shirt that actually fit. He'd gained 20 pounds of muscle, working in the club's auto shop during the day and training with the brothers at night. He had an apartment now, small, but his. A bed. A kitchen. A door that locked. He had a home. The staff hung on the clubhouse wall, mounted like a trophy. Sometimes members would point to it and tell the story, how a homeless kid fought off 3 armed men to save the president's daughter. The story grew with each telling, but Jax never corrected them. Let them have their legend. The door opened. Marcus walked in, carrying something over his arm, a leather vest, cute. But this one was different. It had no center patch, no death head. Just 2 words on the bottom rocker, stitched in white thread. Prospect. Marcus laid it on the bar in front of Jax. You've been here 2 months. You've worked hard. You've kept your mouth shut. You've earned respect. He paused. If you want it, this is yours. You'd be a prospect, not a member, not yet. You'd have to earn that. Could take years. But you'd be part of this club. Part of this family. Jax stared at the vest. Once, he'd had nothing. No family, no home, no future. He'd been invisible, disposable, forgotten. Now he had a choice. He picked up the vest. The leather was soft, worn in by someone before him, but the stitching was new. He slipped it on over his shoulders. It fit perfectly. I want it, Jax said quietly. I want the family. Marcus's hand clapped on his shoulder, strong and warm. Then welcome home, brother. Around the bar, bikers began to thump their fists on tables and the bar top itself, the sound rolling through the room like thunder. Jax looked at the staff on the wall, at the men around him, and Marcus standing beside him with pride in his eyes. For 19 years, Jax had been alone? Not anymore.